So, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Women's Coffee Club. We created this club to provide a safe space for women to share and inspire each other and to learn from a different presenter each week. And we're so fortunate to have uh, Deborah Servetnick. I probably didn't say it right.
You did this fine.
To present an intro to psychedelic for transformation. So, Deborah, if you don't mind, tell us a little bit about yourself and why you decided to choose this topic.
Okay, thanks for having me. I always go by Grateful Deb. That just kind of simplifies it. Where that came from was I've always been into the Grateful Dead because that was true. Like that was my teenage years, and I couldn't wait to like live the life of like a traveling hippie, go to the shows and, find LSD. I didn't know what it was, experience all this stuff. And what happened, and my curiosity was just really strong back in those days. So if anybody here has that kind of experience, I'd love to know. Just wave your hand, let me know who you are. Yeah, I see some people here. I see Sandra. It looks like you might have something to say here. And okay, good. And I have some other questions for you too, which is how many people here have experienced psychedelics? If you want to share that, you don't have to. But if you'd like to, if you've ever used psychedelics, thank you, Sandra.
Okay, what's the qualification of psychedelics? Okay,
Okay.
what falls underneath that? Let's just be clear here.
Okay, so psychedelics range from and it's pretty broad. So most people think of psychedelics as like LSD or psilocybin mushrooms, but psychedelics also includes like ketamine. It includes ayahuasca. It includes iboga. It includes, and it even can include cannabis, because cannabis can be a very psychedelic, very spiritual experience. And first of all, before I go any further, I want to say that, the war on drugs really kind of messed this up for everybody. Let me take that back. It didn't kind of mess it up. It totally destroyed this for everybody. So the war on drugs really came out of racism, and it came out of really just trying to support the Vietnam War at a time that it was very unpopular. So the government laid down some rules, turned psychedelics into Schedule 1. Up until 1968 in the USA, they were legal. In 1968, they became illegal. And that really set the stage for why psychedelics have now been 50 years behind in research, when they have some wonderful properties, always have had them. And the government knew that in the USA. After all, they were doing these experiments through the CIA. The really cool thing about that is that's how Ken Kesey and Robert Hunter, who was the lyricist for the Grateful Dead, got started with psychedelics. It's also how Ram Dass, who was Stuart Alpert at the time, also had some connections to Timothy Leary when they were at Harvard. And what happened was through psychedelic use, they started to see the oneness in everything, and it was really hard to fight an unpopular war and hard to fight someone who looked different from you when you could see the oneness. So that became something that, was really stigmatized. Psychedelics became really stigmatized. And I like to think of them as a tool for recreation. I don't think there's a wrong way to use psychedelics. I do believe there are better ways to use psychedelics. However, there are ways to really expand your consciousness intentionally. And the thing that I sort of want to talk about a little here too is that in the desire to medicalize them, because that's how we go, right? We find what's wrong in this society, right? Where this society is based on circumstances, and we're trained to look at circumstances. So people here who have been taught that psychedelics can solve depression or anxiety or things like that, treatment-resistant depression, PTSD, you know, that's become the acceptable way to use them. And in the USA, because veterans have that kind of unilateral support from everyone, it became the best way to approach this was as we treat veterans from this. So that's where it's at with psychedelics. But I really believe that they're tools for spiritual expansion. And when you set an intention, they really amplify what you want to look at. And if you haven't used psychedelics, you want to be sure that you test your psychedelics no matter what. You want to be sure that you're working with someone who's experienced. The most important conversation that's really come out of all the work in the 60s and 70s was set and setting, which means, you know, there's a way to use them in a certain environment that's going to invite a certain result, meaning you want it to be peaceful, inviting, relaxing. You want it to feel supportive. You don't want to be at a music festival, now you can't find your car. They're the kind of things that have, you know, resulted in the stories that you hear about that psychedelics can be negative. So if you have any kind of interest in using them, if you're living in the UK, you know, the Imperial College is one of the groundbreakers in this area. So you might want to talk with them. If you're living in the USA, I live in Baltimore, the home of Johns Hopkins. And for me, my return to psychedelics happened when I had a stage 3 cancer diagnosis. So what happened there was I had heard that psychedelics were really useful in working through the anxiety and depression of a cancer diagnosis. And yes, I was a Grateful Dead goer for many years, but because I got so sick, I really didn't have any connections to my community here in Baltimore because I'm originally from Philadelphia. My husband was from Baltimore, so I moved here. And, you know, my husband would say to me, why don't you just go to a Grateful Dead concert and go get some psychedelics? And I was like, listen, you know, I go to hear the music and I'm not going to sit there and vet these psychedelics in the parking lot. Are these safe? Are these not safe? And my hope was to get in the JHU psilocybin cancer study. And I got in. And I don't know what would have happened had I not get in. But one of the reasons why I got in was I was the right age, because you can age out of these studies. And don't forget, they don't take people in these studies unless they believe they're going to have a good result. So the study was great. It worked out great for me, but not necessarily because they wanted to help me. They wanted to do a study. I'm really clear about this. Most people pin their hopes on getting into a study, and that's just not very likely. At this point in my life, I'm 64 now. I wouldn't even be eligible, I don't think, for this study. I also want to let you know if you've heard of Roland Griffiths. Roland Griffiths he's the clinical director at JHU. When I met him, he's a meditator and he's a pretty serious guy. When I met him, my first impression of Roland was, wow, he's wrapped pretty tight. And over the years, I've watched him present in locally in Baltimore frequently, and I've gotten to know him a little bit. And in the last couple of years, he has a stage 4 cancer diagnosis now. It's really changed him, and he's speaking out a lot. And he did a great interview with Tim Ferriss, but an even better interview with the New York Times. So if you go to the New York Times, you can read it's in the New York Times Sunday edition a couple of weeks back. It's a beautiful interview, and you can see that he's really changed a lot through his cancer diagnosis. So when I got accepted into this JHU study, the first thing they did, I met with Mary Casamano, who you might have seen. She's pretty well known. She's an amazing, wonderful person. She's guided hundreds of sessions. She was my guide. I was really fortunate. And when I worked with her, the first time I did I got my substance, it was a placebo. So this was really good because I was all about my victimhood, right? Like, okay, so now I'm going to die and you gave me a placebo. I just want to tell you, this was 12 years ago. Okay. So I was all about like, I don't even know if I'm going to make it to the next time you give this to me. Well, they called me in pretty quickly. I got the next dose and it was a big trip. And I saw Jesus on the cross. And when I saw Jesus on the cross, Jewish girl saying Jesus on the cross, I was like, I know you have something real important for me, Jesus. So what could it be? Right. And what I heard in my journey was, you've really been attached to your struggle. And I didn't know what that meant, except I saw myself crawling through the dirt, and I saw myself crawling the trail of tears. I had no idea what this meant, but in the last 2 years, it's really all unfolded as I've traveled and guided people in what were formerly mining towns, gold mining towns and coal mining towns on the, in Colorado and Northern California. And it was a real eye opener. I had actual, visions, conversations, and the whole thing made sense to me. And most of you know that my husband died in September, and I had just come back from the Vancouver Sisters in Psychedelics, which is this t-shirt. So big thanks to all you folks in Canada, because you have a good thing going over there. And and when I came back, my husband asked me to take him to the emergency room. I had just spoken at this conference. I came back, walked in the door. He said, "Can you take me to the emergency room?" And within 2 weeks, he was gone. So that's another thing I want to say. I want to really thank you here for all the people that supported me, because I've sort of dropped in and out when I first showed up here. And so many of you reached out to me and sent me beautiful messages. And the really cool thing about my journey and my experience with psychedelics is I know that we're living in the land of infinite intelligence, and I speak with him all the time. So although I miss him very much in the physical, I don't doubt for a moment that he's not with me. I mean, he's with me all the time. So I'd like to show you a little video, and this is just a short video that was made about 3 years ago for a group called Unlimited Sciences, who invited me they interviewed me, and this was, psychedelics have really come a real long way in about the last 3 years. And I was very, very vocal, and I didn't mind being seen, and I didn't, and I knew nobody would F with me because I had cancer, and I just wanted to, I really just knew that if I spoke out about the power of psychedelics, that it would really be okay. So I became very, very seen. I've been in a bunch of movies. I've spoken in a lot of conferences, and I started a nonprofit that's called Serve Medicine. And I'm going to tell you about that as soon as we come back from the movie. So thank you, Rini. We don't have any sound yet, right?
Did you select screen share with sound? Because when you go on screen share, you have to select the sound as well.
Okay, hang on. I think I go to share sound. Okay, I'm going to start over.
When I say that breast cancer and my psilocybin study changed me, it completely changed me. The difference between my life then and my life now is just unrecognizable. And I 100% believe that my recovery has so much to do with psychedelics. My name is Deborah Servetnick, and I was a participant in the psilocybin cancer study at Johns Hopkins. I was diagnosed with stage 3 breast cancer in 2011. I was really desperate. I was really depressed. I didn't know what else to do. I had a few psychedelic experiences in my past, but I hadn't done anything like that in decades. If I didn't get into this Hopkins study, I can't even imagine what my life would be like. It really saved my life. I remember feeling how this whole trip with cancer was me trying to justify that my life wasn't too easy, and that I deserved some kind of life that was worth living, because that's the message of psilocybin. The message is that we're all connected and this is a universe, and what you think about is really important. Almost all of the problems that I had during cancer were from prescription drugs. I encountered no side effects from psilocybin, except I felt so much better. It took years for my chemo brain to recover, and I do believe it was through psychedelics. Psilocybin is in nature. It has its own infinite intelligence, and we're meant to bring it into our lives.
Okay.
Thank you. So now you kind of saw that, and most of those pictures were real, everything except those breasts, which weren't mine. But you did see what happened after my surgery, and it was a pretty awful experience, I really have to say. And after chemo, I could barely finish a sentence. It took me years, truly, to finish a sentence. It took me a long time to be able to walk. There was a time during chemo I couldn't walk at all, and the chemo, I had to get off chemo, and I said to my oncologist, you know, I'm going to let you take complete credit for this because I'm going to get better. And you can tell anybody anything you want, but I'm getting off chemo because I knew chemo would kill me. I mean, I had such a terrible reaction to chemo. So when I started using mushrooms, that really helped a lot. And I started microdosing LSD. And of course, I did that all wrong. I did it every day for 4 months straight. I had no idea. I just kind of did it. But I can tell you this, I went to a wedding, and for the first time ever, I could not only stand, I danced. And I danced for like 4 hours straight, and he was sitting in the chair. And that was a completely new experience because I was used to walking a few feet and leaning against the wall, and walking a few feet and leaning against the wall. And that's really how I had to do it. So, and you saw my burns, like from radiation too. And that was the thing too. You know, I had to actually go into my oncologist's office and beg, truly beg for Silvadene. But here's what happened. I went to my girlfriend's house. By the time I got there, and I drove from Baltimore to Philadelphia, by the time I got there, I was in so much pain. And she goes into her refrigerator and pulls out this jar of Silvadene. And I say to her, oh my God, what is this stuff? It's magical. It feels amazing. She says, oh yeah, it came from a friend of ours and she left it here. So I go back to my radiologist after that weekend on a Monday, and I say, so my friend said Silvadene, you know, why aren't you giving that to me? And he said, okay. And he opened up a cabinet, and I've been sitting in this room every single day, right? He opened up a cabinet filled with Silvadene little things. And this is the thing about treatment. And this is why I'm also so, I really encourage you to not think about psychedelics as a remedy for anxiety or depression, or like you have to be so sick that now you get to use it, because that's how, you know, that's the model that, you know, of course, we don't really believe that within this group, but that's the model that so many people are working with, and they're really working on a conditional model. So for me, I became a life mastery consultant. What I do is I prepare people for 12 weeks, really anytime after the 10th week, you can take a journey. I use either MDMA, which is a heart opener, and I've been trained in MDMA through Multidisciplinary Association for Psychedelic Studies, MAPS, which I encourage you to check out, MAPS, capital MAPS. And they do some amazing things. They're in the stage 3, phase 3 studies of these things. So I use MDMA for that. That's really good for trauma, really good for relationships. I also use LSD. That happens to be really good for cluster headaches, things like that. Mostly I use psilocybin because psilocybin will remake you. It remakes every cell in your body. And one of the reasons why people feel so changed is I really believe that psilocybin is remaking you during those 6 hours, and you are not going to come out the same. So in that sense, I also use ketamine. That's legal, and ketamine has been legal. And most of you have probably, you probably don't know who John Lilly is, but you probably know about him. He's the guy who did deprivation tanks and swam with dolphins, and all that stuff comes from his work. Unfortunately, he got really addicted to ketamine, because ketamine, it feels so good, okay, that most people who don't know how addictive it was, and he really didn't know. This was like in the 70s. It can be very easy, unless you have a really good practitioner to really, if you're administering this yourself, it can be really easy to just go a little too far with this. But you've probably seen like Seven Perfect Strangers. I think that's what it's called, right? Or Blue Lotus, which I haven't seen either one of those. But I got to tell you, or you probably watch Gwyneth Paltrow, but most people I know will ask me about those things. I don't know anything about them, because that's not really where I spend my time. But you might want to check out, there's some great videos with Anderson Cooper where he goes into Johns Hopkins and goes into the little room that they use. And Mary Casamano's in it, and they'll give you like a real overview of what that session is like. Also want to tell you that through ancient history, psychedelics have been used. They've been used in ancient Rome, ancient Greece. There's a great book called The Immortality Code by Brian Murarescu, where he talks all about this. You also want to watch Fantastic Fungi. If you're familiar with the Gratitude movie by Louis Schwartzberg, yeah, it's more of the same. It's time-elapsed, beautiful photography, and it's got an amazing story about Paul Stamets. I don't want to tell you about it, because you want to watch it unfold in the movie, but the story is incredible. And Paul Stamets went on to become one of the best mycologists, self-trained, that there is. So all of this stuff, now that it's 2023, medicalization is, and certification is all trying to like keep this in this real restricted place. And I have to say, I took this Naropa study. I became certified through Naropa, and I always wanted to go to Naropa because I always loved Allen Ginsberg and all the hippies and all this stuff. Always was my big dream to go to Boulder and do that. Well, last year I did that, and I finished the program. So I'm now certified through MAPS to provide psychedelics. Of course, they're not legal yet, except they're decriminalized in many places. I live near Washington, D.C., where they're decriminalized. You can even buy mushrooms in a cannabis dispensary now. It's not legal, but it's possible. And the other things are in Colorado, it's legal, like in Denver. It's also been decriminalized in a number of places in California. If you're reading about this stuff in Oregon put all this together. They've made a lot of mistakes along the way, and unfortunately, it's not a great model. But if you've ever really heard of Bicycle Day, just like you've heard of 420, right? To celebrate cannabis, Bicycle Day celebrates the day that Albert Hoffman rode his bike home after being in his lab and touching LSD, and he ended up tripping. And because it was World War II and cars were kind of limited on the road, he had a bicycle and he rode his bike home and had a great, fantastic trip, completely altered experience. And that's where Bicycle Day comes from. But the really cool thing about Bicycle Day, if you live in the USA and you know about the midnight ride of Paul Revere, right? That was his vehicle, was his horse. We like to think about Bicycle Day as that being his vehicle to bring psychedelics to the planet, right? So that's a cool thing. And Unlimited Sciences, who made that video of me, they do lots of work with athletes. And the reason why is they have lots of concussions. And psychedelics have been shown to really help a lot of brain injury. Mike Tyson talks about it. Mike Tyson is a different person. The ear-biting guy is a different person. He's done lots of ayahuasca. And ayahuasca, really interesting thing about ayahuasca is composed of two vines that don't grow anywhere near each other. Somehow infinite intelligence matched them up and they became the perfect substance. And there are very specific things. If you're going to do an ayahuasca journey, there's a dieta you want to do. You want to be very, very careful about your practitioner. And if you want to ever ask me about any of this stuff, please do. That's really all I can say as an overview, but I I just want to really invite you to think about this as a way to expand and a way to recreate. So you're not bringing that stigma with you. And so you can really use this as how it was intended. It really is an expression of infinite intelligence. So if you have any questions, also I wanted to let you know there's I was trying to figure out a way to connect this, but I don't have a link, just has an email. But UCLA, the Friends of UCLA have a showing on Wednesday, May 10th. It's 5 p.m. Pacific time in the USA. And it's entitled Psychedelics for Human Suffering, A New Paradigm for the 21st Century. And it's hosted by Charles Grob, who's one of the preeminent researchers in this area. And they're going to talk about the history and the pharmacology and how psychedelics can help to just really work with expanding people's experience and alleviate their suffering. So I'll try to figure out some way to get this into the chat somewhere. And that's it. If you have any questions, please ask.
That's amazing, Deb. I had no idea about all this. So this is, excuse me, very new to me. Can you, after the meeting, can you post the link or the information on our chat group so people can follow up with that? But who has question? That's really interesting. So it does help with your cancer. And I didn't know, is this, so you said it's not legal yet? It's a consider like medical drug or something?
Well, it depends where you live. And most of the time people have to get in a study. So if you go to my site, and my site is gratefulDeb.com, I have information there. And the other thing too, and here's the thing I forgot to tell you. So I created a nonprofit, and this is our little handout. And basically what it says is, have psychedelics and Grateful Dead made your life better? Serve medicine once your story. And the reason why I did that, and the reason why I did that, and this is my logo, which you can see is pretty psychedelic. We got a little Grateful Dead kind of oriented like skull. There's a little butterfly. And the reason why I'm connecting Grateful Dead to psychedelics is that really is how that started for me. If it weren't for the Grateful Dead, I don't think psychedelics would have even been on my radar, number one. Number two was, the acid tests was the Grateful Dead was the house band at the acid tests. And the acid tests were at Ken Kesey's house. And Ken Kesey was part of the CIA experiment when he was working at the psychiatric hospital in Palo Alto, and he got access to psychedelics. And then, wow, that was just too much fun. And then they got on that crazy psychedelic painted bus and aimed further and drove across the country, a bunch of hippies dressed they were wearing mostly striped shirts. So they kind of blended in, and a bunch of wrestlers and folks like that from University of Oregon. And I was just in California where those guys who are about 80 years old now, I met some of those guys that, for me were like, oh my gosh, like, oh, wow, this is such an honor. And I also met Owsley Stanley's wife, whose name is Roni Stanley. And Owsley was one of the biggest LSD makers, and he was also known as Bear. So when you see bears with the Grateful Dead, it's named after Owsley. That's where the bears came from. And Owsley sold acid to create like this incredible sound system. And that's how the Grateful Dead had their gigantic wall of sound. And that's how he funded the Grateful Dead to travel. The history is so amazing. And I met Owsley's wife. I didn't know who she was. She was this almost 80-year-old old hippie woman, kind of walking around. I was at this festival and I'm talking to her and I'm telling her about Serve Medicine. And here's what Serve Medicine is. Serve Medicine is a 501c3 nonprofit I founded with my husband, Donnie, who was a psychedelic attorney. And what it does is it provides a psychedelic guided journey for someone with a life-threatening illness or end-of-life diagnosis. And there's like 4 pillars to this. The first one is this book, which is about how Grateful Dead and psychedelics made your life better. So we sell the book. The second way is we have 1,000 guides. Donate one session to fund 1,000, to provide and fund 1,000 psychedelic journeys a year from coast to coast. And then we have a partnership of individuals and corporate donators. And then the fourth way is we partner with Grateful Dead oriented events. So people know that we're around. And if you'd like a psychedelic journey, you can apply. And that's how we do it.
So yeah, if you don't mind, after the session, you post it on our chat, all of that information you just talk about.
Okay.
So Sandra, go ahead.
Oh, I forgot I had my hand up. Sorry about that. That I just really enjoyed, because in 2014, I did all the preparation and went to a spirit quest in Peru. And my daughter says, Mom, whatever you do, don't drink the potion. I said, that's why I'm going. If not now, when? But yes, I would definitely concur. I've heard of people and friends of mine who have tested it, but you need to know who you're dealing with, because we had a 10-day diet. We had to apply first. So there was quite a process to go through and even apply in our state of mind to know what to expect. And then we had to have a special diet for 10 days before we got there. And yeah, it was just amazing. So I was there for 2 weeks, and it was amazing.
Where were you? What retreat were you?
Spirit Quest was what it was called down in Peru. That was with Howard, and I can't think of his last name. I've got photos from it and so on. But yeah, he had his own shaman, plus he'd been practicing as a shaman himself for 20 years. But it was called Spirit Quest, and we had a long preparation and very, very carefully guided. Very carefully guided.
And that was ayahuasca.
That was ayahuasca.
Yeah, ayahuasca. When I journeyed with ayahuasca, and the visuals that I had, and there's so many visuals that come from ayahuasca. I thought to myself, well, now I know why we have all those, why my Mexican art looks like that. Like, man, that's what I saw. I mean, yeah. All that angular, all that incredible, like bird imagery, all that stuff. It was pretty amazing. And the thing is, the substance in ayahuasca that does that psychedelic journey is DMT. So DMT is also something you'll hear about DMT, and DMT is the thing that they say that's already within our brains, and that sort of is what the connection is.
And once you take it, it never leaves your body. He said you'll have it forever. And you started out scanning. It was just like you could imagine inside a computer, all these little circuit boards, and it was quite amazing. That was the beginning of it. Gabor Mate, I don't know if you know of him, but he has certainly been starting to use guided spirit quest in Peru and in the South to take people and help them off their addictions and so on as well.
Yeah, and he's got a great book that's very popular right now about trauma. So if anybody here feels like, and his things, really about what we think of as normal in an abnormal society, how can we call this stuff normal? So I really like to say that, just like I learned before I used psychedelics, that you are your highest authority. I still really believe you are your highest authority. It's completely possible for you to have a psychedelic journey without a sitter, without a guide, but not for ayahuasca. Like that's a all-nighter. And
I mean, that's the yes, it was. And because we were there for 2 weeks, we had like three ceremonies, and then Baba Singha, I think, was the other one. There was going to be 2 of those. But anyhow, yeah, there was 2 of those. Baba Singha, I think it was called. But the whole thing is that when you're in Peru, I was in Cusco for a week afterwards, and there's just little doorways. There's ayahuasca over top. So tourists and travelers could just go in and to me, after what I'd been through with the guiding that was necessary, I thought, wow, that's scary business. And in Brazil, there's the ayahuasca church where they all.
And that's here too. There is also, the church is also here. There's Santo Daime. You can find experiences locally, probably wherever you are at the Santo Daime church. But the thing is, with that stuff is their lives are integrated, and our lives in this Western world are not integrated. So we talk a lot about integration after you have a psychedelic experience, and that's because we don't live with our elders. We don't feel connected to the planet.
Mm-hmm.
We don't eat healthy things. I mean, all of those things add up to the way they experience things, the way they come of age, the ceremonies they have within their own everyday life. Most of us have never experienced that. So,
no. And I find the same too. I have an Ethiopian family. I've been their Canada mom now for 18 years. And the little girl was 5 years old when she arrived. And anyone coming from those countries where there's less privacy and more integration, they see things that our kids and us never see early on. The mystery of life is not much of a mystery even for a 5-year-old. And that's a whole different presence that they bring. Yeah. So I'll stop now because I took up your time, but that was beautiful. Thank you so much. I'd love to connect.
Yeah.
Thank you, Sandra. Go ahead. Angie? Sorry,
Yes.
Deb, you want to say something first, or you go ahead, Angie?
Fine. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, thanks, Deb. I've got an ancient old conflict, First of all, I'm not against it whatsoever, right? I haven't tried the ayahuasca yet, so I've never gone to that depth, simply because of a lack of opportunity. But the thing is, when I was reading Carlos Castaneda when he came out, 40 years ago and things like that, I always had the question, because I'm a very spiritual person. I work a lot with energies, and my issue, you both touched on it, is that people go on a trip and they have the experience, but when they come into daily life, they're still disconnected, and then it becomes an escape. Because the thing is, most of these psychedelics, you can reach those levels of consciousness and those experiences without any assistance. And this is what I've always been discussing and questioning. Wouldn't it be so much better to actually teach the people to get to these levels without, Now, what you said with ayahuasca, there's different things, and there's like an intervention which takes you to levels that you can't kind of reach. But this is what I always question, what is the after effect, so that it doesn't become an escape, like what Sandra says, people just go on a trip, because then it's just another escape, and it still doesn't do anything for the planet and really for the people.
Okay, let me answer that. You raised a lot of good points, but here's the thing. I know I had a gym membership and I never went. And I not only had a gym membership once, I had it a couple times and never went. So if you're not doing, and I did it thinking like something was going to change, but nothing changed. And then, I have to tell you, the program that I teach, I had to take it 3 times before I even stepped into it. Like, I teach what Mary Morrissey taught me, which is, dream builder and life mastery. It took me like 3 good rounds of that. I probably invested like $30,000 till I even, really believed that it was me, that it wasn't everybody else. Nobody was doing anything to me, and cancer didn't happen to me. And, after all, I was organic. After all, I did all these great things, how could that happen to me? So I sort of think, I really think that psychedelics are the same way. It's like, if you're going to do the preparation, you have to do the preparation. You can't build a house on a rocky foundation. So no matter what's going on, the psychedelics are temporary. I'm going to say that the change in psychedelics are temporary, but that's why I offer a foundation. That's why before we even get there, you have a vision. That's why after you have a vision, you start thinking about yourself in a way that feels really loving. You stop talking to yourself in ways that feel really punishing. I know when I had cancer, I punished myself every day. I know before I had cancer, I really punished myself. And that's where that came from. And I know that. And I can tell you this, right when I had cancer and I started thinking about, gosh, I want to help people with cancer. And I went to my coach and said to him, I don't know what to do. How do I tell people that's their thinking? Like if somebody would have told me it was my thinking, I would have been like, you're crazy. I would never give myself cancer. Okay. And my coach said to me, this was so good. My coach said, well, you know what? He said, you can go into battle with your pants dry, or you can go into battle with your pants wet, but everybody comes out of battle with their pants wet. And I thought that was like the best piece of advice I ever had, because I thought to myself, well, if I really believe this, I gotta really be ready to really respond to these kind of questions, which is, well, what if I get there without the psychedelics? Well, good luck. Because you can't really hold that transformation unless you're noticing your words, unless you're noticing your emotions. Here's the other thing. People talk about heroic doses. This has become very popular in the psychedelic world, like a dose of 5 or more, grams of psychedelics, of mushrooms. Well, because lots of folks are on SSRIs. They spent all these years trying to not feel a thing, that they don't even understand that their feelings have been guiding them. And since we're vibrational, how you feel matters every single second you're creating. Every thought is generative. So if you're not creating upward, you're creating downward. So it's not that you can get there by yourself, and you should do that. It's that if you're in your own way, you're not going to be able to do that. That's why it's really helpful to talk to someone that keeps you accountable. And that's why it's really helpful to talk to someone that says, yeah, it's never just the psychedelics alone, but the psychedelics, because they are temporary and you will forget. But that's why when someone's having a journey, I'll say to them, I can video you with your phone. I won't keep it. It belongs to you. I don't ever want to show it to anybody, but you can see yourself. And I can tell you this, I have a booklet I give people, and I say, tell me whatever it is you want to write down, because you won't remember, and I'll write it down. So if you want to say dog in a blue dress, I'm not going to go, what do you mean dog in a blue dress? I'm going to go dog in a blue dress. And you'll know what you meant, because you had that thought, but you won't remember dog in a blue dress unless I write that down for you, because you have so many thoughts.
See, this is exactly the point, because I do hypnotherapy. I do very spiritual hypnosis. And together with me, the people go into those levels. They have dances with their spirit animals and things like that, but they're fully aware of it. They're fully aware of where they are, and they get the lessons. They don't need to watch themselves in a recording. They get the lessons in a time and in a space which is appropriate for them, so that they then, when they go out of it, they don't have a hangover, right? They don't feel sick, okay? And they're ready to implement this, because it kind of goes in increments.
Well, you don't get, well, hold on a second. You don't get a hangover, you don't get sick from this stuff. And the thing, that's why we do a dieta on purpose, because if you come out of an ayahuasca journey and it's like 4 days later and you drink a cup of coffee, oh my goodness, you don't want to do that, because you are so cleaned out. You are so, you are living in such an empty space, and the space between is as valuable as the space you fill up, right? So that's, and I also use hypnotherapy, but and I'm trained in RTT. So I also use that, but sometimes people will just kind of tell me that they're making stuff up. I'll say, go ahead, make it up. Go ahead, we make it all up. Doesn't matter. We make up whatever we believe. Like, this happened to me because of this. I don't go down that rabbit hole ever. And when someone has a journey, we don't go down that rabbit hole. It's always a reminder of what would you love and what if it were easy? And that's where I stay. And I really do think there's a huge benefit in psychedelics. I don't think everyone needs to use psychedelics. But
can I just speak to the Anja just for a second as well? I'll make it really short, because I know I'm out of turn here. But I'm going to tell you that my curiosity gets me. And I'm just one of the billions of people in the world that are curious. So you're going to do a trip? Yeah, I'm going to go and do a trip. I was scared of it enough to make sure I was going to go through a proper application and know I was going to be in a safe and appropriate place. Not everyone's that way, but if they're on a trip, if they're on the trip traveling to Peru or Brazil and they're going to go in and try ayahuasca, it's curiosity. Oh, let me try that. Doesn't mean that they're necessarily going to come home and get addicted to anything. It's an experience.
Yeah, no, I agree. I totally agree with that. And especially when it is guided, you know, so that they have a container and they have people catching them when they come down and looking after them before they adjust to the 3-dimensional or 2-dimensional world again. You know, I think that is very important. Like I said at the beginning, I'm not against it. It's just the question is, you know, where and how do we require this, because we have the capabilities to reach those places by ourselves, you know. But it's interesting.
I want to say this. I really want to say this, which is, you know, it's 6 hours that are all about you, and most people spend more time planning a vacation than they think about, you know, what it is that they would love, how they're holding themselves back from that because, you know, their belief says I want it, but, and they do it with everything. They do it with money.
I do believe in the intervention of things like cancer. You know, it is hugely beneficial. You know, so that is. But yeah, so it's interesting. I want to give Julie a chance because we're almost on the hour. The bottom line is I have to actually see for myself, you know, and compare it to my unaided journeys.
Have you ever used psychedelics?
Sorry?
Have you ever used psychedelics?
That's why I asked, you know, I have not used ayahuasca or what's it, not the San Pedro or something like that. I haven't used those.
Have you ever used mushrooms?
No, I can't get them.
Okay, so here's the thing, and I really want to say this. Mushrooms, you know, they're ancient. They've been used since the beginning.
I know.
Oh, hold on a second. And LSD, you know, that came from ergot, right? So it came from a mold and people just sort of decided that was it. But, you know, in every church, in every synagogue, you know, there's like a ceremony with the wine. There really is just an altered element. And if you could do it without that, why don't they do it without that? Because there's a part of the sacrament that takes you to a place that separates your everyday life from this place. And that's what psychedelics will do. And now I'm going to go to Julie.
Yeah, let's go to Julie, and then we can come back again, Angie, just to give her some time. She's dying to say something.
I've been jumping up and down the whole session, Deb. You've just blown me away, and I love it because it just, you know, I've heard a lot too, and I watched Fantastic Fungi, and I went into this world of, oh my God, you know, this is just what we all know. There's these connections, and you know, nearly all my life I've meditated. I've done just about everything you name, but I've never really quite made it. You know, I've always believed, oh no, others can do it and I'm not just not getting there. I'm not getting that, you know, and yet I know it exists. So, you know, and I know what you're saying too, aren't you? But to me, even with meditation, and I've been meditating for years, but I still struggle hugely with being able to connect to that inner wonderful self, you know, which I know is there. I know. So I'm just excited, and I'm excited also for the fact that it's of its curative properties. That's probably my most exciting, because in my family I've got a daughter-in-law with Huntington's disease, and you know, I mean, if I go back to New Zealand, they'll just think I've just got one more stage more bonkers than I've been, you know, most of the time when I've been there. But hey, I love it. I want to know more, please. I want to join, whatever you're going to do. I just think you're doing amazing things. And we really do need to take a look at, you know, the ancients in the way that things have been used all through the centuries, including, you know, we're into 4-Life too, and that's doing amazing things. You know, there is so much out there that isn't horrible narcotics that destroy, you know, and chemotherapy. You know, it's killing people, you know, not the cancer, it's the chemotherapy that often kills people, you know. So thank you so much.
Thank
And I
you.
want more. I had no idea that we had such an expert in our midst.
Well, thank you. I'm really grateful that you came, and like I'm saying, go to my site. There's going to be a separate site for Serve Medicine. It's coming, and that's where I'm going. I'm mostly leaving. Like I have individual clients. I went out to California to work with them. I fly. I go to people all the time, but I'm more interested now in doing this nonprofit Serve Medicine, because I think, and it came from a journey I had, and I heard Servetnick medicine, serve medicine, and I thought to myself,
Yes, so that's why,
right? Yeah,
that's why you're the very best person to be doing something like this, because you've actually experienced it and experienced the healing from it. So this is what's wonderful. Mind you, even if I had, I still wouldn't. You're not going to convince everybody for sure. But the point is,
the cool thing I want to say about fantastic fungi is, you see that mushrooms, they transform life. They take dead things and turn it into something new. That's the power of mushrooms. Mushrooms are little transformers, and that's why I say, if you really want, like, if LSD is like a different kind of thing, MDMA is like a different kind of thing. Mushrooms grow. They've been doing
that's
this
what
forever.
really got me. And the mycelium of everything in life, and the roots, and it's intelligence. It's the intelligence that's going through everything. So this is what, to me, really sparked me. And I thought that man, I've forgotten what his name is, that did the movie.
Louis Schwartzberg.
Oh my God, it was just amazing. And he himself had struggled hugely with his difficulties. As an identical twin, wasn't he, or something like that? Anyway, he had a lot of issues that he got through. Brilliant, really lovely. Thank you. I have to stay in touch. Please put everything in so we can connect, because I want to get it down the southern hemisphere in Europe.
Well, I'm going to confess that I'm a terrible typer. That came from chemo. I don't talk about it much, but I don't like to type. I'm not a keyboarder, and I still have like some side effects. 12 years later, I have side effects from chemo, but I can tell you, the mushrooms put my head back together. They put my.
Thank you so much, both of you. We're almost at the top of the hour, but I know Kathleen Klein is also into mushrooms. So Kathleen, do you want to make any comment about this?
Hi, yes. Oops, hold on.
You're muted. Go ahead.
Okay. When the student is ready, the teacher will appear. And that is literally how I feel right now. This is the most exciting presentation I've seen yet. And I definitely want to sign up. I want to become certified to do this, to add this to my wellness business. I used to do mushrooms when I was younger, and I was also a big deadhead. Recently, it's super ironic. Before I saw your information on what this week's presentation was going to be, I started microdosing myself. I've got a lot of mental health issues from long COVID. Stuff that maybe it's stuff that I had that I buried that is like coming out now because of long haulers. But I'm only on day 3, I think. So I don't really have anything to report just yet, but
Where do you live?
Pardon?
Where do you live?
In Binghamton, upstate New York.
Okay.
But
I'll get in touch with you. Yeah. You can
100%.
You can call me. You can WhatsApp me. You can messenger me. You can phone call me. Like, do whatever you want. Like, I'm here.
I will. And I do know the magic of mushrooms. And it's not just the psychedelic mushrooms. I take mushroom tinctures. I drink mushroom coffee, Rise. I just ordered it. It's delicious. Mushrooms truly have the power to heal, and psychedelic mushrooms can heal your mind. I'm also interested to try microdosing with the MDMA to see how that affects me.
Can't
You
microdose
know.
MDMA.
You can't.
Not really. Don't do that.
Oh,
Not
okay.
recommend that. Yeah.
Uh-huh. So, yeah, super, super excited about this. I also watched Fantastic Fungi, and it was one of the best documentaries I've seen. That guy was incredible. So I can't even, I'm like buzzing with excitement right now. Thanks so much. I really feel like the universe has brought me to you.
Thank you so much. That's awesome.
Thank you.
Well, wow. Yeah. Please connect offline, as we're already running out of time here. But I could see that there are pros and cons to this. Just have to make sure that you use it guided. I mean, not just using it by yourself without any knowledge. But Deb, this has been an amazing presentation. You know, put your information on the chat, and then people connect with Deb offline. Any other last minute comment before we close? Binta, it looks like you want to say something.
Oh, well, I just want to say thank you to Deborah, because I've never experienced any of this, but I've heard a lot about ayahuasca, because one of my yoga teachers is a big fan of ayahuasca. And every time he talks about going on a retreat to take people, like you say, you need to be in a safe space to do ayahuasca. So he does that maybe once every year. I mean, once a year or twice anyway. But I've been always nervous to go. And so, but you just opened up so much of knowledge with all these things. And again, being open-minded. I come from a culture where none of this is like taboo. You can't even talk about these things. But having an open mind, I'm just curious. It's curiosity, just like Sandra says. If you're curious to go through that journey, then it's great, right? So for me, I'm curious. I just want to experience. So it's good that you're here. That I can connect with you whenever I'm ready. So thank you for expanding my awareness about this. Thank you so much.
Hey, thank you again. Francis, we're sorry that this is really the end of the presentation, but welcome to the Women's Coffee Club. But Omeka, Lori, Faith, we need to close this. Any other comment, or you're good?
Can I
Okay.
just say, I would like to say that Deb not only offered us a healing modality, which also I had no idea what to expect, because I came from a very conservative background. And so I didn't even know it was going to be so interesting. But I am also a cancer survivor, and that chemo is no joke. And so any healing modality that can be anything better than that is 100% worth checking out. But I'd also like to say Deb offered us a lot of nuggets of wisdom just in her talking about understanding. Like when she said, "Have I suffered enough yet?" That really was a light bulb moment for me. And I want to thank her for her talk.
Thank you, Faith. Thank you so much. And Lori, are you good? I'm gonna give the last opportunity for Deb to say something before we close. But thank you again, Deb, and all of you for coming here. Really appreciate it. And then Deb will follow up with the information on the chat. But Deb, go ahead and close this out. Lori, do you have anything before she unmute herself?
I know we're trying to close. So just, I live with a terminally ill person, so it was really interesting for me. So
thank you. Thank you for that, Lori.
I invite you to go to my page and just put your name in or something and get in contact with me. We are really providing 1,000 journeys to people with guides that are vetted, and they're underground guides. Because listen, no matter who I'm trying to please with my certification, forget it. I've been doing this because I know the power of this, and I know how this works. And I also know, and to Kathleen, I'm going to be in Ithaca for the Dead and Company show at Cornell. And that's the thing. It's like I travel a lot. I go to all the dead shows when I'm out there, and I just, that vibration, that high vibration thing, it's not an accident that it's all connected. So I invite you all to go just gratefulDeb.com if you need to find me anytime, or, you know, text me anytime, whatever it is. I'm busy a lot with work, but I'm happy to respond to you and anytime. So yeah.
Thank
I will
you.
see you in Ithaca.
Yeah. I'll be in it.
Great. Thank you so much again, everyone. We ran out of time here, so thank you, and we'll see you next week. Have a great week, everyone. Have a great weekend. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.